You're like, yo, this ain't working. Why is this so hard? Like, yo, homeboy's about to cut a whole planet in half, bro. Like, please. Happy New Year, everyone. And I am super proud and excited to announce that this is my 100th video, just not the special. I want to talk about Silent Hill 3 before I did my special because it was one hell of a game. And actually, to be honest, it might have been like my favorite one, to be honest with you. So I am going to do a 100th video special. It's just going to end up being my 101st special. And I just kind of figure out what the heck I'm going to do for it. Because I don't know. I'm never got this far. So, yeah. Let's think about that. So with that being said, I'm going to cut this video short and I'll see you in the next video. JK. So anyway, before I did this video, I did some searches on the internet and I kind of decided to myself, man, like, I feel like Silent Hill 3 really ain't respected like that. Like, it is, but it's not. It's a respected game, but it's like the dictating of Silent Hill 2 kind of overshadows the phenom that's actually Silent Hill 3. You see, it's kind of like the trilogy goes into this peak, and the peak is like Silent Hill 2, and then it goes downhill directly after. People love the game, but I found that a good amount of horror fans of the franchise was like, the story was trash, it was boring, there were certain sections that was like drawn out, mainly like the subway section to begin with. It was this weird coming of age story where the bosses were kind of weird. Some said it was overrated somehow, like, bro, what the is overrated? Like, bro, how? What the hell? Lies being spewed, man. I don't like that. Lies being spewed. Before I get started, if you're new here, definitely subscribe to the channel, drop a like on the video, I greatly appreciate it. Let's talk about it.
Oh, forget it. This is way too gross. Who would even think of doing something so disgusting?
Silent Hill 3 continues where Silent Hill 1 left off, hence the rotting dead corpse of Harry Mason. Spoiler, my bad, I apologize. Hey, you know what, it's been like 20, what's that, like 22 years? Bro, you're 22 years too late, so if it's spoilers on this game, you know, that's kind of your fault. So it revolves around Heather Mason, the little baby at the end of the original game, and now she's basically involved with that wild ass cult that Dahlia Gillespie was part of in the first one. It's like they kind of wanted to give Silent Hill 1 another chance a few years later down the road. The cult is now fully in the picture and they want to revive their supreme deity god, and Heather finds out essentially she's like prego with the cult's god. Yeah, no, it's kind of funky, bro. It's kind of funky. It's weird. They was on like acid or something in like the studio coming up with the ideas for this game. They was probably on acid in the studio coming up with the story ideas for any of these games, if we being real. It takes place about 17 years after the original game and is the conclusion of the story. You get new characters like Doug Cartland, the detective on the case, who obviously is crazy enough to hear about this story and try to help out years later for some reason. The hell is happening? You open up like a two-decade old like case and just be like, oh hey, let's see what's going on with this. Mans was on some conjuring type. Claudia Wolf, who's like the high priestess of the order, and Vincent Smith, who's one of the central priests of the order. The beginning of the game takes place in like Portland, or so it's claimed, and transitions into Silent Hill. The whole thing just feels like you're at work at your mall job and you're like the last one to go home. And ironically enough, man, this is kind of creepier than a lot of things in any other Silent Hill game. Like, this is kind of like reaching like the realism of creepy. Yeah, Silent Hill 3 is the worst, and I mean scarier than Silent Hill 2. It is nightmare fuel at its finest. Disclaimer, this is a Silent Hill 3 video, but I'm gonna be talking a lot about 2, or doing a lot of comparisons to 2, because obviously it's most people's favorite, so I gotta compare it to make it look like it's like the weaker game. But yeah, nah, for real, I gotta convince you that I'm not talking crazy here to 3. Well, I personally like 3 better than 2, to some extent. No, I'm just gonna say I like 3 better than 2. It is what it is. Let's just continue. For shits and giggles, shiggles for short, I can say right off the back, the first 10 minutes was fucking terrible. Putting the beginning of both SH2 and SH3 side by side, you can kind of tell enough. 2 is just a nigga walk into a foggy park, in which you can run into another human relatively kinda quickly. 2 is mainly an atmospheric masterpiece, and I will not take that away from it. It's oppressive and unsettling, yet still somehow a bit calming, walking alone by yourself, even with the fog so thick you can cut it with a knife. A metaphor of having a hard time seeing with what's to come. The developers were sadists, because how in the hell are you gonna make me feel nice, but want me to feel dread while I'm enjoying like a nice stroll, trying to find my supposedly dead girlfriend? Bro. What? It feels more of like a maze to me. You might hear some growls, but that's really about it until you get into the main city. Silent Hill 3 just feels fucking terrible. You get one little square of space in the first level of the amusement park before being forced to have to walk through the door and look whatever the hell this is in the face. The amusement park sequence in the beginning is essentially just a nightmare, as Heather wakes up from what seems to be similar to a coffee shop where you have this calming twilight lighting, like it's kind of like a calm before the storm. This is one of the only relaxing places in the game, in my opinion, foreshadowing the places that you come across moving forward that are supposed to be safe places, but ain't at all anymore, at all. Silent Hill 3 doesn't really waste any time getting down and dirty. If you remember, it takes some time to encounter your first official enemy in Silent Hill 2. It has a lot of dark solid grays, blacks, and whites, making sure you can't see anything. Silent Hill 3 is full of browns, reds, and I don't even know, but it makes you feel like a lot of the game seems like someone was murdered on the side of the road. The perfect example of this is the Brookhaven Nightmare Hospital, where everything is so distorted and washed, and most of the memorable bloodletting room. And a lot of proceeding with caution, basically. Silent Hill 2 is a slow burn. Like, there are enemies, but the amount of times you run into enemies is actually pretty light when you actually go into a calculation and, like, look at how many enemies you run into the game. It's actually not as much as you think it is. Pretty much up into the mid-game. Silent Hill 3 doesn't give a damn. You're immediately hit with a lot of enemies with various speeds and abilities, very fast and without a weapon efficient enough to actually take them on. Not to mention there is a larger enemies list in 3. I guess they figured, man, this is the third game, you kind of know what you're getting into, bro. It's kind of too late. Like, too bad, so sad. Silent Hill 3 pretty much one-ups everything in the survival horror genre compared to the predecessor. Now that I probably think about it, Silent Hill 3 had no mask as well, while the OG and 2 gave you hints, previews, and hypotheticals of cults and evil situations happening. Silent Hill 3 is basically the plunge into what those hypotheticals were, as you're deep in the conclusion, so you don't really have much of a choice. You never really came face to face with anything in person in terms of a direct antagonist in the series. Most of this is from the power of the mind. I mean, you came into the situation at the end of the game in Silent Hill 1 where you got to see like the previews and like, I guess, memories of Alyssa Gillespie, but I mean, it wasn't as much. Like, the only time you really ran into like an antagonistic threat in the first one was kind of like the main boss at the end of the game. When you ran into like the situation with Dahlia, the baby happened, such and such and such. And then 2 was pretty much just like a whole, like a mental trip at the end of the day. While Silent Hill 2 just seems like a dreary mental nightmare, 3 feels like you're in the middle of a Saw movie minus the extra graphic details and more of so what's left over. Kind of like when you come across the zombified babes of Lisa Garland during one of the exits. This is so subtle, you don't even initially notice it all. The funny thing is that Heather takes all this in pretty well, than any normal person would. While James feels like such a goofy dumbass the whole time, Heather is a bit of a smartass, but she has more of a personality in my opinion. And I think she's really fleshed out really well to the point where she's more realistic and not too one-dimensional. There's several good factors that make it a little different than Silent Hill 2 in its overall execution.
I knew it.
There are so many parts in the game that take the cake when it comes to making you feel uncomfortable, and just downright confused that it's so special to it. From the dead silence in the certain sections, like in the train station that seems to go on for a very long time, the longer you're there it feels like you're going mentally insane. And it's to the random ass banging and stomping you hear that for some reason sounds like there's someone on your roof. Bothered the absolute hell out of me, because like I'm not even gonna lie, like this actually scared the crap out of me for the good 4 or 5 times, bro, because I was like looking around be like, yo, what's going on? Is there somebody like in my house? Like, is somebody in my room? Like, bro, dog, make you feel really paranoid. And when the elements of the game really make you feel like your life is in danger, bruh, you kind of done a good job. Like, I gotta give you props for that. That's a good feature. Like, it's such a minor detail, but like, yo, that's like a really good feature. Like, that's dope. I can't even fake. Silent Hill 3 Team Silent, do not let anyone bring you down. Like, you might had a short run, but it was a good one. You did a good job. Pats on the back for that one, bro. Pats on the back. The level design was pretty dope in bringing you different levels, not to say that the second one didn't. The hilltop manor made claustrophobia a little all too close while making you feel cornered every door you walk into. The construction site made you feel like you've reached a dead end, literally and metaphorically. Like there's literally a mattress there chilling for you to have a good night's sleep, like you was like a homeless person chilling in like a construction site that needed, I don't know, man, this is kind of weird. Like, yo, another thing Silent Hill 3 does very well is presenting agoraphobia. A lot of the mall and a few areas of the game present a dead silence while there's no one around. It's funny because most Silent Hill games, the doors are locked, so it's not like you're going into most of these places anyway. It's playing off the fear that there's a wide range of space in which you can meet your end, or if there is something actually there, how long will I have to run to make an escape, because it has all the room to chase me down and come for me at this point. Hey, yo, pause. 3 basically kind of takes like horror spaces and makes places that are kind of full of life and comforting into like naturally unsettling, if I do say so myself. Like it makes them feel like you people are really disturbing your peace, to be honest. Like it's just like, yo, why are you here? I just wanted to prance to some flowers, do a nice garden, and you here making it bad for me. Why? Even when it comes to the subway section, Heather's whole objective was to get home, but why is there no one around? Why is she all alone in the subway station all of a sudden? And how long does this go for? She even gets pushed by some force, which can be very realistic. In the wake of these recent issues of people getting attacked on platforms and subway stations, it's not something that's completely unorthodox. And as someone who's from DC and has been up and down the east and north coast, subway stations can be a little kind of odd and uncomforting at night. Trust me, it's not the most safest place. Silent Hill 2 is kind of set in a setting where you wouldn't be even in the first place. Who the goes down jumping down dark pits with no bottom in sight? Who goes to abandoned hotels? Common sense would tell you that's nowhere probably you should be going. It's just gonna be the end of you at the end of the day. There's even a scene where Harry Mason dies. You can see the tragic terror and pain in Heather, and she just has to sit there and witness her father being murdered and truly realize now she's the only alone solo individual in the world. I am so sorry, girl. The horror of Silent Hill 3 comes in many different forms, and I really feel like 3 places variety on the player just as well as Silent Hill 2, or even better in some cases, mental and physical. It's referenced early on that Heather hates mirrors, and in one section of the game it shows where you kind of at least expected. The room starts to mold into what I would call pure evil and perversion, covering the walls of Heather's mind. Like, do I really want to stay in here and risk something happening? Because I kind of want to know if it is something's gonna happen. And at some point, the reflection will become an entirely different person than what she's actually looking at.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear. Oh, I forgot your name.
While Silent Hill 2 seems to run off the fear of the unknown, Silent Hill 3 seems to run off the anger, hate, and revenge of the main character. It's more of a direct approach in the series' reoccurring pace of, you don't know what the you're getting into. You just play and we can figure it out on the way. Represents not necessarily an immediate issue, but it gives clarity early on what your objectives and goals are. Heather is, to be honest, a pretty lost but determined teenage girl, and experiencing loss and knows who she's beefing with, and that she wants Claudia to feel something, and it's just a matter of how and when. Yet probably still feels some kind of sympathy. This is shown in the church when you have the option to pretty much tell Claudia off in a confessional when she's praying to the Order's God.
I know I'll be put to death for the sins I've committed, and I'll go to my death gladly and with a peaceful heart. But please, grant me just a small piece of your everlasting mercy. Let me see my child once within your golden gate.
Heather deciding for herself what kind of person she wants to be to someone who's been a disruptor in her life shows a lot more of her character in detail. Heather is still just a teenager, and as we can kind of tell, we all know the inner conflict when it comes to what kind of person you want to be, and it's a pretty normal battle when you're coming of age. Turn the other cheek or be petty. There's not really a wrong answer, it just kind of depends on what you feel or what kind of person you are, or your experiences. Heather in turn wasn't like James at all. Her character development comes along with building her identity. The Order wants her to be this when she doesn't want to be that exact thing. Taking control of her own life and body is an ongoing battle within herself as a girl. Another special element of what makes her character so special that plays along with the horror of Silent Hill 3 is simply one of her navigating the game as a teenage girl itself. Early in the game, you can see that Harry left her with a pocket knife and a taser for her protection. And in regards to how most women have to move in real life, Stanley being discussed early on in the game also reinforced this. Stanley is basically one of the patients that was in the Brookhaven Hospital that kind of knew of Heather's like supernatural powers, essentially. Long story short, he doesn't even really make an appearance in the game, but when it comes to creepy simps trying to holler through your DMs, it might just kind of bring up the same long-term effect. Because like, yo, Stanley was a creepy guy. Like, he had like stuff like on his walls, like memoirs and murals for like Heather, and I'm like, bro, isn't Heather like bro, how old are you? Like, I'm hoping this man is like also underage, but I don't think he was. Like, bro, she's like 17 in the game. So I'm just like, when it comes to her response to things, even upon dealing with the loss of Harry, her motivation is carried by her frustration and disgust in the whole thing, rather than fear. As stated in the intro, Silent Hill 3 is more of a revenge story more than anything. Claudia kills Harry for ruining the Order's plans, and Heather seeks to revenge on Claudia for killing Harry. This alone makes Silent Hill 3 a completely different story than of 2, and as a response, creating a completely different kind of story. And for the good ending of the game, she finally claims on who she wants to be, that being Cheryl instead of Heather, and to be able to live out the life she wants to live. And even if the Order decides to come back like the Empire in The Force Awakens, which kind of make no sense because the Empire was done, she kind of knows who she is, and that's what's important. Do your thing, girl. Do your thing.
That was supposed to be the exit, but it seems that no one wants you to leave. Everyone really likes you. They want you to stay with them.
Silent Hill 3's gameplay is just like the other two installments. Here's your main protagonist. Find your goal, solve puzzles, fight or run past whatever enemy you feel is necessary to interact with. From what I said from the start, it doesn't pull any punches from engaging you with enemies as soon as possible. A lot of the enemies are very much so easy to really go around. Battling really isn't most of your concern. I do feel like the battle aspects of the game were overall weaker than 2. 3 felt a lot more clunkier of a game in my opinion, and it was just sometimes not very good. I'm not sure if it was like the overall frame rate or like the hitboxes, or if like something that made 2 seem a more smoother game as far as like melee combat was concerned. But I feel like landing blows was more of like, it felt like more of you was taking a risk in 3. I don't know if I'm weird about saying it, but yeah, it just felt weird. I can't really explain how many times Melee and Nurse felt like it was kind of useless instead of just turning their ass into Swiss cheese. The double heads don't really give you a chance to really gather yourself. I mean, realistically, it's a Silent Hill game, so they probably just did it on purpose to not gather yourself and just to freak you out. But even so, the tactical portions of the game, I just didn't feel was very balanced. In fact, crazy to say, most of the enemies aren't even worth attacking. Perfect example, I found it kind of useless to attack an insane cancer enemy, and when I did, I thought it was a requirement, and another time, I thought I was kind of stuck, so I didn't really have a choice but to fight in the first place. Closes are a bit too big to even bother with, and pretty much super slow, so you can just run past them. I've never in my game, and never in my life, in this game, fought a closer. Like, there's no reason for me to even waste my time, bullets, or anything on closers because they're just too slow in the first place. Gluttons are just glued to the wall and just kind of move themselves once you kind of figure out the part of the story. Pendulums, which I can't even see what the hell they are in the first place, were just super obnoxious. I've never heard anything so annoying. Fear wasn't even a factor here. I just didn't want them in the gameplay. I didn't even want them in the screen. Like, yo, I heard the sound and I was like, yo, oh my gosh, please, bro, not another pendulum. I don't even know what they were called. They were just, I was like, they were just like floating rusted pieces of iron. That's what they looked like at first. I was like, what the hell is this? was bad. I hated pendulums. They're like the worst enemies in like any Silent Hill game so far. With the first 3, I haven't played The Room. I might play The Room, but I haven't played The Room yet. There was just one part in the construction level where there was like 3 of these at a time where you really can't move. So honestly, it was kind of like the best to just take damage while walking past them, because it's not like the camera was helping you with the BS in the first place. There also wasn't too much detail and symbolism in the meanings behind some of the enemies. And if anything, that symbolism is kind of like all speculation. And I thought that was kind of like I don't know, I feel like that was kind of a dud, to be honest. Example, when it comes to the split worm boss, it's always been talked about it being some sort of sperm, some sort of phallic thing, being based off of like Heather's fear of sex. But once again, that's kind of like a speculation. Like, you can literally go to like the Silent Hill like wiki, and it'll be like, this is kind of just a speculation. It's not like confirmed. Plus, there's a lot of like depictions of like maternity and like childbirth and everything in Silent Hill 3, so that's probably what it is. Silent Hill overall has always had a really good one with the artistic value of the enemies, but 3 was somewhat slacking. Correct me if I'm wrong. The most obvious one I found was the Slurper, which possibly represents Heather's fear of offenders and attackers. And you can kind of clearly tell with their designs, if I do say so myself. Actually, I really hated these things. These were the most creepy enemies in the game, in my opinion. Most of the time, they were in the darkest, most inconvenient and anxiety-driven areas, which would make a whole lot of sense because motherfuckers be in the club and they trying to like, they see that ass and they be like, I'd be like, damn son, you're not gonna get nothing acting like that, bro. Like, come on son, like, yo, like, what is this? Perfect example. Like, yo, what's going on here, cuz? Like, yo, you on the ground and everything, bro. What is this? Like, this not it. Speaking of bosses, there weren't too many memorable ones. The God was pretty easy as a final boss, as he basically stands in one place, with flames that you gotta dodge every few shots. Leonard Wolf, who was Claudia's abusive father, and just like a weird father, and just was just a weird boss in general. One of the creepiest, if I'm being real. It was an okay boss battle, but this is one of the places where you can run out of ammo, and it was just so slow. The whole time, dude feels like he's moving in slow motion. I get the purpose was for him to move faster in the water, but it was hard to find a pace of the fight. No thanks to the odd camera angles and restricted space. I really prefer to save ammo in these kinds of games, which is why I kind of prefer to use melee weapons throughout, but they really wasn't giving me any much of an option. They really said tank controls with this today. It's like trying to operate a Gundam. When you get into the Gundam, you find that it's the Gundam from like G Gundam, and you're like, yo, this ain't working. Why is this so hard? Like, yo, homeboy's about to cut a whole planet in half, bro. Like, please, send help! While there appears to be more enemies, there's less meaning behind them, which I feel is where the game kind of failed. Perhaps it's because of the time span the team had to work with. I mean, it's kind of known that this was like the one, I think this was supposedly the last Silent Hill game, or the last Silent Hill that that specific team worked on, and so they had like a very like short development time or something like that. It was somewhere in that ballpark. I don't really know, but you get the idea. Puzzles in the game aren't really too different than the others, but I did feel like they were a lot easier overall. Most of the puzzles didn't require any struggle for me. At some points in Silent Hill 2, I felt like some didn't really make sense at all, which kind of led me to have to look things up in case I wasn't going crazy. But 3's puzzles were seemingly no-brainers. The easiest puzzle being the book puzzle in the mall, it was just essentially lining everything up. The only complicated one, in my opinion, was the morgue puzzle, which was kind of just disorienting on how it was aligned. It was kind of even crazier because of where it was. The morgue is, in my opinion, one of the scariest places in the game, so trying to figure this out all while feeling someone or something was watching you was, dare I say, a very engaging experience. Most people seem to complain a lot about the plot points and the mundane story of Silent Hill 3, but I don't think it was so bad. Silent Hill 2 was a lot more drawn out, as I said earlier, and it was kind of like a slow burn, while Silent Hill 3 throws you right into the picture, but I don't really think that played against it. I feel like a lot of the game, up until a point Heather gets reunited with Harry, kept you at a pace that gave you the feeling of 2, but shifted the tables once a sense of urgency came into the picture. Heather just wanted to get home for the most part, but in a sense of adversity when you're traveling, that kind of happens sometimes. Like, you run into inconveniences when you're like on a trip, and just every time one thing goes wrong, 2 things goes wrong, and it's kind of like a frustrating situation. So I kind of think that they did a really good job on like following up like a sense of realism when it comes to that whole like thing happening when someone's traveling or trying to make it to another place. But I don't know. I feel like Silent Hill 3 kind of opened the doors on a sense of like making things in realistic situations more horrific than just throwing something that is just outwardly scary. Silent Hill 3 is a well-rounded game in my opinion, even with those few things I loved less about it. I feel like it was a different game, and they tried to present something that was a little bit different, but a little bit in the same realm. Heather, in my opinion, is a very well fleshed out character. It is interesting that she's never really mentioned in a good female MCs list. Both James and Heather created a new category in the motion for video game MCs, regardless of how you look at it. An overall scarier game with phenomenal graphics at the time, 3 was clean, rendered to the T. Them shades was crazy good to the point where it actually kind of looked like it was cell shaded, which was back in the day. Think about Wind Waker. Cell shaded was really popular back in the day. And don't get me started on the phenomenal soundtrack with the really good vocal scores. I can't help but love to see a 3 remake, and to be honest, I just saw the other day that they're probably making the 3 and the 1 remake and the Resident Evil 1 remake of the remake. It's just the remake age, bro. Like, dog, like, if they wanted to make a whole different game, it's fine. I don't know. I mean, games are gonna last. They kind of open up to different audiences, younger audiences, so I understand. It's pretty fun. It's a you know, it's a double-edged sword with some things sometimes. As long as it's good. As long as it's good. I'm not going to complain. And I feel like I'm really playing these games at a great time, because every time I pick up an older game to play through, it's like a remake is essentially like announced a few months later. And I'm just like, it's funny because I'm playing all these games that I just didn't play when I was younger.
We must stay focused.
Most of these are rated M for mature games. My mom wasn't buying no M for mature games. She was reading this. She was like, nah, it's rated M for mature. Can't buy it. Sorry. First M-rated game that I got for myself was GTA 4. I went into Best Buy, and I was like, I'm getting GTA 4. No, it was No More Heroes. Then it was GTA 4. Actually, I don't remember. It was one of the two. I think it was GTA 4. I don't know. Who cares? But anyway, yeah, man. Silent 3 was a dope game. I enjoyed it. I think I liked it more than the second one. It definitely had like lower quality elements than the second one, but overall, I think the overall atmosphere of Silent Hill 3 was fucking phenomenal in my opinion. What did you guys think about Silent Hill 3? Did you love it? Did you hate it? What do you think was the peak of the game? Do you think Silent Hill 2 will always be the greatest one for you? Would you love to see a Silent Hill 3 remake? And if they do, what would you want to see in it? How would you want to see like it play out? What would you think the things that they should change, characters they should change, plot lines they should change, or if they should change anything and just keep the graphical detail as the main selling point? It is what it is. Let's talk about it in the comments. If you made it to the end of this video, I greatly appreciate it. It means a ton to me that you sat here and watched the whole thing. Definitely like the video, share with the homies, subscribe to the channel. I greatly appreciate it. I left my links in the description down below. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Facebook, follow me on SoundCloud. Not really Facebook, but SoundCloud for sure, because I produce some stuff. You guys want to hear some remixes of any kind of video game music, I'm up to the challenge. So yeah, let me know. This is Kaimaxz. Stay safe, stay kicking. I'll catch y'all later.